My husband and in-laws chose the janitor closet for my bridal prep room, laughing, "You'll be out of there before the guests arrive anyway." 6 days later, their smiles vanished as the real guest list was announced. I'm Mira. 32, born and raised in Annapolis, Maryland. I'm an editor by day, an amateur baker by stress, and the kind of person who sends thank you cards with actual handwriting. Idris and I met at a book launch in Georgetown. He was there with his cousin, whose memoir I was helping publish. He was soft-spoken, wore glasses that kept sliding down his nose, and spoke about Miles Davis and data science in the same sentence. I was intrigued. 3 years of museum dates, crossword battles, lazy Sundays with jazz playing in the background. He wasn't flashy, wasn't overly affectionate, but I appreciated his calm. Or maybe I mistook detachment for calm. When he proposed, it was under the cherry blossoms in D.C., and I cried. Not because I was overwhelmed, but because for once, I felt like I had something stable. Solid. I didn't realize the cracks were already there. His family would make sure I saw them. His mother, Mirella, had a thick accent and an even thicker sense of pride. Every time I visited their home in Arlington, it was like walking into a museum curated by her expectations. "You're not Lebanese, but at least you're educated," she once said to me, smiling while pouring tea. His father, Rafiq, rarely spoke, but when he did, it was mostly with raised eyebrows and disapproving silence. Zaina, his sister, was a lot. Think hyper-influencer energy, yoga latte bikini diet culture cranked to 11. She wasn't mean exactly, just that specific brand of dismissive that leaves you wondering if you're being gaslit. The first red flag? I missed it. We were planning the wedding, and I suggested a small ceremony in the garden of the inn where we had our first weekend trip together. Just 60 people, intimate and cozy. Idris nodded. Nice idea. We'll see what my mom thinks. That should have been a warning shot. But I told myself, he's being respectful of his family's wishes. That's good, right? No. It's good when it's mutual. When compromise has 2 lanes. His mom wanted 200 guests. Many of whom I didn't know. People from their community. This isn't just your wedding, she reminded me. It's our family's event. The phrase became a chorus in my head, our family's event. Our family's traditions. Our family's needs. And what about me? I started getting sidelined in planning decisions. My florist was swapped without notice. The caterer I loved, who specialized in Mediterranean fusion dishes, was deemed too trendy, and replaced by a vendor they preferred. I found out when the contract landed in my inbox for signature. Why didn't you tell me? I asked Idris. He looked tired. It was just food, Mira. You said you liked the other one too, remember? I remembered liking it. I didn't remember agreeing to it. But again, I let it go. That was my mistake, letting it go. I let go of my original venue. I let go of the live string quartet. I let go of my custom invitations because Zaina insisted she could design something way more Insta-worthy. By the time we were 2 weeks from the wedding, I was floating through decisions that weren't mine. I felt like a guest. Not even that, a seat filler. Until the closet. That final walkthrough was supposed to be a formality. We had made the reservations for the Walters Art Museum in Baltimore months ago. The layout was simple. The bridal suite upstairs for me, another room nearby for the bridesmaids. Idris and his groomsmen would use the room downstairs. When I arrived, everyone was already there, Zaina with her sunglasses on indoors, Mirella sipping coffee, Idris scrolling his phone. The event coordinator gave me a strange look but didn't say anything. Let's see your prep room first. Zaina chirped. We made some changes. They led me down a hallway. Then down a flight of service stairs. The air grew colder. The lighting changed from warm to flickering fluorescent. And then they opened the door. It was a utility room. Not just small. Humiliating. It reeked of ammonia. A single bare bulb hung from the ceiling. There was a folding table shoved against the wall with a plastic chair. A trash bin full of dirty rags sat nearby. "This, isn't it?" I said. "There's been a mistake." Zaina leaned against the doorframe, casual. "There was a scheduling conflict. I needed the upstairs for makeup. There wasn't enough room for my team and the bridesmaids." "This will be fine for you. You'll only be in here an hour," Mirella added. "It's not worth making a fuss." I looked at Idris. I waited for him to say something. To defend me. To take my hand, maybe lead me out of there. He didn't. He just said, "It's not ideal, but we'll make it work." We'll make it work. No apology. No discomfort. Just acceptance that this janitor's closet, was what I was being given on my wedding day. I nodded. Smiled even. Then excused myself to use the restroom. But I didn't go to the restroom. I went to my car. Sat behind the wheel with the AC running. And I cried. Not because of the room. But because of the silence. His silence. His mother's smugness. His sister's power play. And most of all, my complicity. I had let them do this. Bit by bit, cut by cut. But I was done bleeding. That night, I packed a bag and drove to my old roommate's place. Becca lived in MT Vernon and worked as an events coordinator. She didn't ask questions. She just opened the door and handed me a glass of wine. And then, I told her everything. The next morning, we started making calls. And just like that, the plan was rewritten. The first thing we did was check the availability of other venues. It was a long shot, most places book out months, sometimes years, in advance. But Becca had connections. The Baltimore Museum of Art had a cancellation just 5 days away, the exact date of the original wedding. I remember the look Becca gave me when she hung up the phone. "You want it?" I didn't hesitate. "Book it." And just like that, I took my wedding back. Over the next few days, I moved with a kind of quiet, controlled urgency. I wasn't angry, not anymore. I was focused. Sharper than I had felt in months. I drafted a new guest list. Not the 200 people Idris's family insisted on. Not the work colleagues I hadn't spoken to in a year. Just my people. The ones who had been there for me in real ways, through my dad's surgery, through job losses, through birthdays and heartbreaks. My parents. My brother Ronan and his wife. My college friends. My editor mentor from my first job. A few cousins. My childhood best friend from the cul-de-sac we grew up on. 62 people total. I called every one of them myself. "I know it's last minute, but I'm changing the wedding venue," I said. "What happened?" they all asked. I gave a short version, enough to let them know it wasn't working, but not so much that it turned into gossip. "I want to be surrounded by people who love me. That's all." To my surprise, almost everyone said yes. The responses flooded in. Flights were changed. Hotel rooms cancelled. Dresses re-steamed. Some people offered to help with setup. Others sent wine. Becca handled most of the logistics, flowers, catering, sound, and I just approved things with quiet nods. Meanwhile, I didn't respond to Idris. Not at first. He sent a few messages. "Hey, we need to go over the program again." Then, the seating chart changed. "Can we talk?" He didn't know I had cancelled the original venue. He didn't know that, 6 days later, he would show up to a locked door. But I knew. And every time I thought about that broom closet, about Mirella's smirk, about Zaina's "it's not a big deal" shrug, I remembered exactly why I wasn't saying anything yet. They hadn't just dismissed me, they had diminished me. Made me feel like I was lucky to be included in their grand family tradition. Like I was an accessory to Idris's life, not an equal partner in it. I thought about the years I spent with him, how I slowly bent myself into a shape that would be accepted. How I let myself become smaller so I wouldn't be too much for his family. How I'd convinced myself that being quiet and agreeable was mature. But now, I felt like I had come back to myself. 3 days before the wedding, Idris called me. Not text. Not email. A full call. I stared at the screen for a while before answering. His voice was light, too casual. Hey. My mom wants to confirm the makeup schedule for the morning. She said Zaina's team needs to be upstairs by 8. I didn't even blink. I canceled the wedding. Silence. What? I canceled the Walters. We're not getting married there. Long pause. Then, wait, what do you mean? You can't just cancel, I paid for it. It was under my name. I called them last week. His voice rose slightly. You did that without telling me? Just like your family made changes without telling me? Just like they switched my prep room to a janitor's closet? He fell silent again. I didn't know about that, he finally said. Yes, you did, I replied calmly. You were there. You didn't say a word. I could hear him breathing. Probably sitting in that same living room where Zaina had once told me I was a little too quiet to be in this family. Okay, he said slowly. So, where is the wedding now? There is no wedding. What? I'm having a celebration. With my real guest list. At the Baltimore Museum of Art. You're not on it. I hung up. He called back. I didn't answer. Then Morella called. Then Zaina. I blocked them both. My mother, who had tried to stay neutral through all of this, came to Becca's place with a bag full of jewelry and her grandmother's lace shawl. We'll make you look like a queen, she said simply. And we did. The night before the event, I sat in front of a full-length mirror in Becca's guest room. I wasn't anxious. I wasn't sad. I felt calm. I thought I'd feel angry, even heartbroken. But I didn't. The anger had passed. The heartbreak had passed. All that was left was clarity. I wasn't just walking away from Idris. I was walking away from a future where I'd be told how to behave, what to accept, who to be grateful to for crumbs. I was reclaiming my space. My day. My dignity. The next morning, I woke up early. The sun was already pushing through the curtains. The forecast was clear. 69 degrees. No wind. I drank my coffee in silence while the team arrived. We decorated the atrium with jasmine and ivory roses. A small quartet played soft instrumental pieces. The lighting was natural and warm. Guests began arriving around noon, confused at first but then smiling as they saw me waiting near the entrance. There were hugs. Laughter. Even a few tears. Everyone wore what they wanted. No dress codes. No traditions forced on anyone. People kept asking me, "So are you still?" I smiled. You'll see. And that's when the speeches began. I stood there behind the little podium we'd set up under the atrium arch, jasmine trailing behind me like a curtain of quiet strength. I wasn't dressed like a traditional bride. No veil. No train. Just a pale blue silk gown, soft, simple, mine. My hair was swept up with pins that sparkled like flecks of ocean under the lights. Becca handed me the mic and gave me the smallest, proudest nod. The string quartet faded out mid-song, sensing the shift. The atrium fell silent. I looked out at the people in front of me, faces I loved. Not one of them had been selected by Idris's family. These were mine. Every single person had known me for years. Through college, through my father's stroke, through every failure and win and heartbreak. Some had driven in from out of state with barely 2 days' notice. Some had changed plans they couldn't really afford to change. But they came. Because when you build real community, real love, people show up. My throat tightened, but not from nerves. It was something else. Something like freedom. I cleared it gently. First off, I began, and a few chuckles rippled through the group. I want to thank you all for being here. I know this probably looks a little different than what you were expecting. More laughter. Warm, knowing. I was supposed to be standing here today in a white dress, next to a man I've spent the last 3 years planning a future with. Instead, I'm standing here alone, but not really. I gestured around me. Because when everything started unraveling, when the things that should have mattered didn't, and the things that should have been small became unbearable, this group of people reminded me who I was. There was quiet. Not a still, awkward silence, but the kind that holds space for something honest. I took a slow breath. When Idris proposed, I believed I was saying yes to a partnership. To building a life together. And for a while, I clung to that idea, even when it stopped being true. Even when the decision stopped being mine. Even when my presence in his family was something to be tolerated, not celebrated. I let myself shrink for the sake of peace. I convinced myself that quietness was maturity. That compromise meant silence. I paused. I saw my father's hands clench around my mother's. She blinked fast. My brother sat straighter, eyes fixed on mine. And then last week, I was led to a closet. A few people shifted. One woman audibly muttered, "Ugh," under her breath. A literal janitor's closet, I repeated, letting the words hang. Because there wasn't room for the bride upstairs. Because I wouldn't be there long anyway. Because I should be quiet, grateful, cooperative. Because they thought they could humiliate me and I would still walk down the aisle and smile for pictures. I didn't cry. My voice didn't shake. I was past that. They thought I'd show up and play my part. But what they forgot is that this isn't a performance. It's my life. A few heads nodded. Someone whispered, "Damn right." And I'd rather stand here, today, unmarried, in a dress I picked myself, with no one's approval but my own, than walk into a life where I am expected to be small forever. I let out a breath I hadn't known I was holding. Someone started clapping, Becca, I think. Then others joined. Loud, proud. No pity in it. No awkwardness. It was the sound of people saying, "We see you. We're with you." I stepped down from the arch and walked back toward my people. My tribe. My family, both by blood and by bond. For the next few hours, we celebrated. Really celebrated. The courtyard was filled with conversation and the kind of laughter that carries from table to table. Guests wandered through the exhibits between glasses of wine. My childhood friend Rami brought out a guitar after dinner and played old indie covers while we sat on rented cushions and pillows. There were no posed photos. No rehearsed dances. No garter toss. Just joy. Real joy. No one brought up Idris. No one needed to. But I could feel it on the edges of the day, the questions that lingered. What happened on his side? What did he think when he showed up at a locked venue, with 200 guests arriving behind him? I didn't know. But a part of me didn't care. And that part grew louder with each passing hour. I did hear murmurs later, through mutual friends. That his mother screamed at the museum staff, threatening to sue. That Zaina cried, not because of the missing bride, but because no one was there to photograph her entrance. That guests stood outside for over an hour, confused, calling relatives to figure out where the wedding had gone. Some left angry. Some just left. Idris, apparently, didn't speak. Just sat there in his tux, staring at the entrance, phone in hand. He texted me once that night. "You didn't have to embarrass me like that." I stared at it. Then set my phone down without replying. The event ended at dusk. The sun dipped behind the museum's edge, throwing orange and lavender shadows across the marble. People hugged each other goodbye, promises to visit soon, plans to stay in touch. My mother pulled me in for a hug that lasted longer than usual. "You remind me of your grandmother," she whispered. Stubborn. But right. I laughed. And for the first time in a long time, it wasn't tired or bitter. Just full. When everyone had left, and only Becca and I were left standing in the dimmed atrium, I finally sat down on one of the folding chairs and kicked off my shoes. She handed me a glass of water. You did it. I nodded. Yeah. I did. She tilted her head. So what now? I looked out at the now empty tables, the crumpled napkins, the string lights still flickering overhead. And I said, quietly, but with certainty, now. I live. But that wasn't the end. Because what happened after that day, the reactions, the rumors, the fallout, that's when things really got complicated. The morning after my non-wedding, I slept in. For the first time in what felt like months, there was no inbox waiting to be cleared, no phone buzzing with guilt-tripped reminders from Mirella, no fake apologies from Idris. Just quiet. And sunlight. Becca had left me a plate of eggs and toast on the kitchen counter with a sticky note, "You are the storm. Proud of you." I sat at her tiny bistro table, barefoot, still wearing the soft silk robe from the day before, eating slowly and smiling between bites. It was the kind of morning I used to dream of. But peace never lasts too long, not when you've rocked the boat of a family that prides itself on control. By noon, the fallout began. It started with a flood of social media activity. Zaina posted a blurry Instagram story of the locked doors at the Walters, captioned, "Some people are all drama, no class." Then Mirella followed suit with a passive-aggressive Facebook status, "We raised our son to respect family." Some people don't come from that kind of background. What they hadn't realized was that about a dozen guests from my celebration were mutual acquaintances. And people talk. Screenshots circulated. Whispers turned to speculation. And what was supposed to be their perfectly curated wedding event became the scandal of the month among their community. I hadn't planned on engaging. I really hadn't. But then Idris emailed me. A long-winded note, written in that cool, analytical tone he used when trying to avoid blame. The subject line, "We need to talk about what you did." He wrote about how humiliated his parents were. About how I should have communicated. How I overreacted. How he was willing to move past this, if I took accountability and publicly cleared up the confusion. That was the word he used. Confusion. As though the choices his family made, the closet, the exclusion, the constant overrides, had just been simple misunderstandings. Missteps. As if I was being emotional instead of deliberate. That's when I knew I couldn't just walk away quietly. Revenge isn't always fireworks and car smashes. Sometimes, it's a scalpel. Slow. Precise. Satisfying. I responded, but not to him. Instead, I posted. Not on Instagram. Not on TikTok. I logged into Facebook, where Mirella's whole circle lingered like ivy on brick walls. Where aunts and uncles and family friends liked to share memes about respectful women and post birthday collages with 4 different fonts. I wrote a single post, attached with 2 photos, one of the janitor's closet, and one of me standing in the atrium of the museum, beaming under the jasmine arch. My caption was measured. Calm. But it cut deep. Sometimes, you find out the life you're about to enter isn't built to hold you, only to shrink you. I was asked to prep for my wedding in a janitor's closet while others took up the space meant for me. I was told to smile, to be grateful, to not make a fuss. So instead of getting married, I chose myself. Thank you to the people who showed up when it mattered. Especially those who made room for me, not just in a venue, but in their hearts. The celebration was beautiful. Honest. Free. I may not have become a wife that day, but I became something better, whole. It didn't take long. Comments poured in. Some were from close friends, others from complete strangers who'd heard the story third-hand. The best part? Mutuals from Idris's side started chiming in, quietly, subtly. "Oh, I remember being confused when I arrived at the museum and there was no staff. Now it all makes sense." Your grace during all this speaks volumes. You were always too good for that family, Mira. I didn't respond to Mirella or Zaina when they sent me angry DMs. I just left them on read. And Idris? He finally showed up at my door 2 weeks later. Unannounced. Becca was out. I had just come back from a walk. He was standing there in jeans and a hoodie like he hadn't once worn a designer tux to what was supposed to be our wedding. Mira, he said. Please. Just let me explain. I let him talk. For almost 20 minutes. He rambled about how he wasn't thinking clearly, how his mother pressured him, how Zaina exaggerated things, how he should have stood up for me. I didn't realize what I was losing, he said finally. I looked him in the eye. Calm. Focused. You weren't losing me, I said. You gave me away. That was it. He asked if we could try again. I told him gently, you had 3 years to choose me. You picked them. Now I'm picking me. He left quietly. And I finally felt the door close, not just between us, but inside me. Like a final room I'd been trapped in had finally opened to sky. In the months that followed, I started over. Moved back into my own place. Small, sunlit, filled with second-hand furniture I loved because I chose it myself. I said yes to a promotion at work. Started attending local author readings again. Took solo trips on weekends, bookstores in Philly, bakeries in Charlottesville, hiking trails along the Shenandoah. One day, I even ran into one of the guests from their side of the family. A second cousin or something. He looked awkward at first, then surprised to see me smiling. I just want you to know, he said, your speech? At the other venue? It got passed around. A lot of us, we saw who you really were. And who they really were. I thanked him. And then I walked away.